It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. Well, last week saw a whole lot of protesting about all the stuff that's going on nationally about immigration, but it wasn't just protesting because there were takeovers of the freeway. There were at one point a street takeover. At one point, some of the protesters commandeered a Chevron gas station. And there was a little criminal activity. Now, wasn't there? Whether it is throwing water bottles at police officers, assaulting police officers, not responding or not adhering to when it's an unlawful assembly and breaking up. And I'm proud to say that for the first time, we're hearing about charges in one of the criminal acts related to these protests, because we have a new district attorney, Nathan Hochman. And boy, oh boy, is it a different experience than the last guy.
Quite frankly.
Let's hear who Hochman is throwing the book at over these protests. And I would imagine there's a lot more charges to come, but this is the first one to make the headlines.
And we're following new details. The LA County DA announced felony charges this morning against a man accused of throwing objects onto the 101 freeway during an immigration protest. NBC4's John Cadis-Klimac joins us live from downtown LA with the DA's comments. John.
Yes, I don't care, even if it's under the guise of a protest. You try to throw things onto the freeway, you kill somebody. So yeah, this guy needs to go to prison.
John.
And also, there are, I would assume, some people that just get so riled up and emotional. I don't know what it is about a mob mentality when they're at a protest that they do incredibly stupid things. We've seen that. But I think there's also an aspect of anytime there's a large gathering, whether it be for a protest or whether it be because your sports team won the game, you have the anarchists and the people that just want to cause destruction who come out regardless under the guise of whatever it is. I have a hard time believing, I was going to say I have a hard time believing that Laker fans, when the Lakers would win championships, just get so revved up from the basketball that they got to go light a car on fire. But then I remembered that alcohol's involved.
John.
Annabelle, this is a felony complaint, so he's not officially charged just yet. That's going to be up to a judge to decide after he gets through his arraignment and preliminary hearing in the next few days. But the DA is saying that they want to take this very seriously. DA Nathan Hochman.
And this is going to be a tough road because there's a lot of political pressure to not do anything about protests. Because, yes, there is protected speech, but when you are breaking laws in your protected speech, is that really still protected? There was a lot of criminal behavior. Shutting down a freeway is not protected speech. I don't care what your story is. We saw that in San Francisco many times where the Bay Bridge was shut down by Gaza protesters. And Brooke Jenkins tried to charge those people. And then the judges said, no, you don't.
DA Nathan Hochman taking to the podium once again earlier this morning to send a message to those who may use recent immigration protests as a way to engage in criminal activity. He says if you hit the streets to peacefully protest, the county will assist you in that. If you go out with intent to commit a crime, the county will come down hard. And that's what happened to 42-year-old Martin Richard Torres of L.A. The DA says on February 3rd, during one of the immigration protests in downtown L.A., he threw 2 books from the Los Angeles Street overpass onto a car down below.
That is full-on criminal behavior under the guise of anything. You do not throw books onto the freeway. You don't throw rocks onto the freeway.
Now, nobody was hurt, but Torres could face more than 7 years in state prison if he's found guilty for what the DA says was a very serious, potentially life-threatening situation.
Put yourself in that car that it basically has a book being thrown at it from the top of effectively a sign on the freeway. And when that hits, hopefully, and it happened in this case, the car was able to continue driving. But if that car ended up having to swerve and ended up swerving into some other car.
You've already got to deal with so much BS on Los Angeles freeways. Not having to worry that someone who's on the overpass is going to throw things at you, that's just another one.
And ended up swerving into some other cars. Not only would there be property damage, but you'd have the chance of serious injury or potentially even death, depending on what's going on. We consider criminal actions like that extremely seriously and want to send the unmistakably clear message that if you want to engage in criminal conduct during a protest, we're going to go after that criminal conduct while absolutely respecting the rights of protesters to lawfully protest.
Lawfully. That doesn't mean shutting down a freeway, and I'd sure like to see those charges coming soon. Although, I don't know if Hochman would deal with that. I don't know if it's a felony to shut down the freeway. If it's a misdemeanor, you're going to hear Heidi Feldstein-Soto, the LA city attorney. Or maybe that'll just go away. But we gotta do something about that.
And the DA says that they're also looking at other instances that happened during the protest, but nothing specific just yet. And as you know, we reported on a stab.
Actually, the throwing of water bottles against police officers, I don't know if that's a felony anymore. Because one of the things that Prop 47 did that Prop 36 did not undo is, I believe, assault against a police officer was declassified as a nonviolent offense.
And the DA says that they're also looking at other instances that happened during the protest, but nothing specific just yet. And as you know, we reported on a stabbing that happened on Friday. The DA, though, says he didn't have any information as to whether or not charges are being brought on that one. We're reporting live this morning in downtown Los Angeles. I'm John Kennedy's Clean Mac, NBC4 News. Annabelle, back to you.
So there you go. The first person charged in that mayhem disguised as protest where someone was throwing things onto the freeway. But Hochman's been busy today. That was his second press conference. First, he was joined by Robert Luna, the sheriff, and Catherine Barger, and several members of the assembly, because maybe today is a reset moment. Maybe now is a reset moment. But all of a sudden, your local members of the California legislature want to get tough on crime, specifically crime related to the fires. What are we talking about? We're talking about looting, and Assemblyman Jesse Gabriel from the San Fernando Valley, I just found out he's my assemblyman. He put together a press conference with a whole bunch of local electeds to talk about adding penalties, adding elevated charges, classing up to a felony for looting during an emergency. I don't know what's in the air right now, but I would like to see more of this. And again, these politicians that we elect for some reason up in Sacramento and Los Angeles, when they do something stupid, you tell them that they did something stupid, or you don't vote for them again. When they do something correctly, whether they're on the right side of the party that you want them to be on, we got to see what they're doing here. Because ultimately, I think the electeds know the public is in a public safety mode. Wherever that pendulum was in 2020, it's in the other direction. So now it is popular, and it should have been popular the whole time, but COVID made everyone a little crazy. But it's popular again to introduce legislation to toughen penalties, to increase penalties, to cut out loopholes where criminals are taking advantage of the law. So let's see what Jesse Gabriel had to say, as well as Mr. Hochman and everybody else.
At the same time, we have also witnessed
This is Jesse Gabriel.
At the same time, we have also witnessed a few.
I skipped past you've just heard it too many times, where everyone has to start every press conference about the fires, talking about, you've seen the best in everybody. These are the greatest heroes. We've heard it. We know they are the best, and we have seen the best, but trying to move on.
At the same time, we have also witnessed a few individuals who have sought to take advantage of this misery and further victimize our communities, whether it be through looting, price gouging, impersonating first responders to enter evacuation zones, or financial scams.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the other things. This new bill, if it passes, which I would hope it does, I'm going to be optimistic about that. It's got bipartisan support, at least in Southern California. But they want to toughen the penalties for the people that were pretending to be firefighters, including the couple that drove down a old fire truck that they bought in Oregon, trying to use it here to get into fire zones to break into people's homes.
We have heard from our law enforcement professionals about the challenges of this predatory behavior, and today we are answering their call. That is why we are.
And yeah, this was something that was proposed. We talked about this a week ago, where Nathan Hochman, the LA County District Attorney, and Todd Spitzer, the Orange County District Attorney, in a joint statement called on Sacramento and Gavin Newsom, we need tougher laws for looting because right now we don't have enough to throw the book at these monsters. It's one thing to break into a house, which is already unacceptable, but to break into a house that's in an evacuation zone, yeah, there's a special place in hell for you, buddy.
That is why we are proud today to announce Assembly Bill 469, bipartisan legislation that will provide law enforcement with better tools to crack down on looting and impersonation of emergency personnel during wildfires and other declared emergencies.
Going after criminals is popular again. Oh, boy, it's like a fever dream we all woke up out of.
Among other important changes, AB 469 allows prosecutors the option to seek stronger penalties for looting and impersonation. It will close existing loopholes that can hinder prosecution, particularly where looting has involved damaged structures or vehicles in mandatory evacuation zones.
Yeah, there's some really interesting legalese when it comes to the penal code, as in, if you just abandoned your car because the fire was a-coming, as so many people did, and someone breaks into your car, but obviously it wasn't locked because you were running for your life, yes, they are looking to update the laws, so that's still a crime. That's not just tampering. That's burglary.
And it will increase peace of mind for impacted communities by extending protections beyond the active disaster and through the recovery and rebuilding process.
That's the other thing. You think, okay, well, this is great. It'll be for the next fire, but what do we do about these zones while they're rebuilding? Well, apparently they want to have this so anytime you have an area that is being impacted by a disaster, whether that's disaster itself or the rebuilding process, which is going to be years from now, don't you dare try to break into these construction sites. Don't you dare try to break into these homes in the Palisades where people are still trying to recover. No, not anymore. Well, assuming this passes and Gavin signs it and they get it into law, which they could do it quickly or it might not be till next January. But hey, they're trying to do something, right?
Our message today is simple. Individuals who put our firefighters at risk or prey on communities when they're at their most vulnerable must be held accountable.
Oh, there's the magic word. Now, I will say, one person in this entire row of speakers, and there was Jesse Gabriel, Jackie Irwin, Nathan Hochman, Assemblywoman Blanca Pacheco, Assemblyman John Harabedian, Robert Luna, Catherine Barger, the DA from Ventura County, Eric Nasarenko, all of them talk tough. Most of them said accountability. One of them specifically said prison. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not who you think it is. Let's go back to this.
As we have observed, looters, and particularly those who impersonate emergency personnel, create chaos and confusion. They endanger residents and first responders. They undermine public trust in evacuation orders.
Yeah, I mean, there was real concern, especially as the evacuation orders were first coming out, of people being like, well, what's going to happen to my home? Is someone going to break into it? Because we saw a lot of that, especially in the Altadena area.
They divert critical emergency resources, and they victimize communities that have already suffered unimaginable harm.
All right. I don't know much about Jesse Gabriel, so I'm going to count this as my introduction to him. I think he's new. So far, I like what I'm hearing.
I know from personal experience that when my community of Encino was under mandatory evacuation orders, many residents were deeply concerned about their homes and their property, which...
I mean, that's because Encino, before the fires, was the target of several burglaries. And yes, maybe we need to increase the penalties for that or figure out ways to throw the book at the people, the crime tourists that were already breaking into all those homes all the time.
Which created further anxiety.
But hey, anytime we're looking to toughen laws, that is a good time.
Which created further anxiety about following evacuation orders.
You know who doesn't care about toughening laws? People who follow the law.
This legislation is based on that simple premise. We cannot and we will not tolerate behavior that endangers the public or puts our brave first responders at risk.
All right, so he talked tough. I give him a B. Now he passed the baton off to Jackie Irwin, who I don't know how these districts are drawn because I thought she was like Ventura, but apparently she's Ventura and the Palisades.
Well, I hear very strongly from almost every...
And she also has very little inflection in her voice. A little monotonic.
While I hear very strongly from almost everyone about their desire to rebuild, there is always concern about the road ahead, and a note of concern about how the scale of this disaster will make that road ahead more difficult.
I think someone lost their place in the note cards.
One way I hope to address the concern is through ensuring that the protections of this bill extend through the rebuild effort. As we plan with health and safety experts for repopulating both Palisades and Altadena, there will be vacant and occupied residents left standing that will be especially vulnerable to looting. Additionally, as the reconstruction begins in the coming months, these parcels will be filled with scarce and in-demand construction materials and tools.
See, that's the other fear and why I think they know they need to do this. Once you have the people that are restoring power to the utilities, you don't want to have the criminal crews going in, because now it's technically not a disaster zone anymore, and stealing all the copper wire that needs to go wire the house. Of course, there's a little ticking clock here. The soonest they could enact whatever they're talking about here into law, because, you know, they didn't call a special session for this, just for all the other nonsense, would be if Gavin says yes, 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 when they finish voting on all their bills in the summer. Maybe it would go into effect in September. But yeah, when you have all these construction crews with all these valuable materials and people who like to steal them and sell them back to the city, yeah, we should make that a big-time felony.
This legislation will make clear to thieves looking for an easy score that our damaged communities have not been forgotten and remain.
If you want to rob someone in a community that didn't burn down. I don't think that's the message they're going for here.
And remain our top priority to protect and serve. Next, I'd like to turn it over to the Los Angeles District Attorney Hochman.
Have you noticed this? I don't know why, but I've noticed this at a couple different press conferences now since Nathan Hochman took office. They never address him by his full name or his first name. It's always Hochman.
Next, I'd like to turn it over to the Los Angeles District Attorney Hochman.
But hey, I'm all for it because this guy is a massive improvement over who was there before. And sometimes you just think to yourself, what would have the response to this been like with George Gascon?
Quite frankly.
Oh, you know, all these burglaries are a crime of poverty. And forget charging anyone that had anything to do with those immigration protests. So elections have consequences, and sometimes they're good consequences. When we come back, we'll hear from Nathan Hochman about what exactly needs to get toughened up when it comes to going after the looters and the burglars who have been trying to steal from fire zones and the people impersonating firefighters and police officers. 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're going through today's press conference from LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman and several members of the Assembly as they introduce a bill, AB 946, to increase penalties for the jackasses looting the fire zones. Anytime we have an emergency going forward and the rebuilding afterwards, also increasing the penalties for the people dressing up and pretending like they're firefighters and police officers. It's good to see. We'll hear from the rest of the speakers here, hear what they have to say, and we're going to find out which one of the speakers says prison, not accountability. It's all coming up next. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking the phone calls at 800-222-KABC. 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com. We're going through the press conference today of members of the Assembly, including Jesse Gabriel and Nathan Hochman, our district attorney, Robert Luna, our sheriff, Catherine Barger, the supervisor, all about new legislation to toughen penalties for anybody that gets the wise idea to start looting during an emergency, like the fires or mudslides or what have you, earthquakes. Totally forget that's a thing in Southern California. Not top of mind at all. But yes, toughening those penalties and toughening the penalties for people that try to impersonate firefighters to get to a fire zone to start doing the looting. Hawkman, it's your turn. Tell us what do we need this for?
Assemblymember Gabriel is absolutely correct that this wildfire crisis has brought out the best and the worst in us. On the best, we've seen the firefighters put their own lives on the line to save lives and to save our homes. We've seen law enforcement work 24 hours a day to go ahead and keep us safe. I, like over 200,000 people, myself and my family, cooperated in the evacuation, and we're away from our homes at least 10 days. Can you
imagine if someone looted the DA's house?
But we followed it because we knew that law enforcement would do its job and do its best to protect our homes and our property. And for the people who actually tragically lost their home, I had a sister who lost her home in the Pacific Palisades. We owed it to them to make sure that the remnants of their community would be kept safe as possible. So when it turns out that we sent a message from the very beginning to the would-be looters, the arsonists, the people who would be impersonating firefighters, the price gougers, and the financial scammers.
Boy, that's quite a crew.
The question is not if, but when they would be arrested, then prosecuted, then punished to the maximum extent of the law.
Yeah.
But when we turn to the law of looting, it turns out when we pulled open the penal code, we saw that the law of looting was actually underwhelming. We could charge first-degree burglary and get people years of state prison. But the law of looting itself...
That's not the prison I was talking about. You knew Hawkman was going to say prison.
But the law of looting itself actually only provided for a misdemeanor with a 1-year county jail sentence.
Yeah. That's looting? No. We got to change that. Hopefully there's the appetite to change that in Sacramento. I would like to believe in the wake of Prop 36, in the wake of Gascon getting defeated, the currently elected members of the Assembly realize that the soft on crime nonsense has got to go, or they're going to go.
So one of the interesting things and one of the best things to come of this crisis is the fact that people from across the political spectrum put down their political differences to see if they could actually accomplish something. And AB 469 is accomplishing something. What it does is it strengthens the laws of looting. So now it's a felony. Now you can go to state prison if you engage in these acts of looting.
And that'll be on top of the burglary charge, because he said he's going to the fullest extent of the law.
During a state of...
Now, I do have a question, and I'm not an expert in this, but just based on past convictions, based on everything that I have seen when it comes to the way that we deal with criminals since good old AB 109, the prison realignment bill, going back to the Jerry Brown days. If somebody gets convicted by a jury of their peers for this new looting felony or class 1 burglary, will that be considered enough to actually spend your sentence in prison? Because what we have seen in the past is that if you are convicted or plead guilty to non-violent felonies, I'll give you it for instance. There was a guy in Riverside County, we called him the snake burglar, and he had broken into over 70 homes, and they had evidence that he had broken into at least 58 of those homes. He pled guilty, but because of AB 109, even though he broke into over 70 houses, those felonies got kicked down to serve the time in jail. The jail was full, and he got time served. So, again, and that's out of Hawkman's hands. That's something that we have to untangle at the statewide level. I don't know if we necessarily are going to, because I would like to see it. Maybe you have to put it in the law. You have to spend this time in prison, regardless if it's violent or not.
During a state...
Because the jails are overcrowded. And if you just send more people to jails, they just have to let more people out of the jails or put more people on probation, which is a disaster because probation is so understaffed and they keep taking deputies off the field and putting them into juvie because no one wants to work at juvie. So there's really nobody to check up on anyone on probation, which is why every time you hear a crime story about some repeat offender, turns out he's on probation.
During a state of emergency. It strengthens the laws dealing with impersonating a firefighter, a police officer, a National Guardsman during this state of emergency. It deals with some of the loopholes out there. For instance, if you go into a house and the house is not occupied because no one's there, they've been evacuated. Now this law deals with those loopholes, deals with the same thing with cars that have been abandoned during a state of emergency. And it also doesn't stop during the state of emergency. It continues on during the renewal and the rebuild process.
Is there going to be a day where, hopefully everything gets rebuilt, people move back in, the neighborhoods are back, and we announce this is no longer a state of emergency. It'll now be a misdemeanor again if you decide to break into these homes.
I so appreciate the bipartisan effort by our assembly members to go ahead and deal with this topic straight on, to increase the tools that we are now given in law enforcement to go after the looters, to make sure they understand that if they want to engage in their despicable acts during a state of emergency, they will be held maximally accountable.
Oh, he used the A word. But still, sounds really good from Hochman, and he explained a couple of reasons why we need these bills. When we come back, we'll hear from the sheriff of Los Angeles County, Robert Luna. We'll hear from the DA of Ventura County, who had some very interesting examples of why we need this kind of extended circumstances, why we need these tougher laws, and hopefully we'll get them. I think the public is behind this. It's unacceptable to burglarize anybody, but burglarizing a fire victim, you got to go away. Hopefully we can find a way to make that happen. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're going through today's press conference where Nathan Hochman, Assemblyman Jesse Gabriel, and a bunch of other electeds announced new legislation to toughen the penalties for the jackasses that have been looting and impersonating first responders during the fire emergency. Let's hear what Robert Luna had to say.
But at the end of the day,
that Robert Luna.
I need you to not feel that way.
That Robert Luna.
Because at the end of the day, we want to hold people accountable.
Oh, I love that one.
Thank you. And thank you all for covering this. If you can only imagine hearing a knock on your door and it's a member of the LA County Sheriff's Department.
You could have just said knock on your door, but sure, bang the podium.
And it's a member of the LA County Sheriff's Department, LAPD, Pasadena PD, and all the other police departments that were involved in evacuation orders during this emergency. And after that knock, we're asking you to grab all your essentials and come with us. Obviously, there's fear, there's anxiety because there's a lot going on in that chaotic time. But one of the things that our deputies constantly deal with is people saying, well, what's going to happen to my home? What if somebody takes something from my home? That consistently happens. It's frustrating. And
yeah, that shouldn't be something that people have to worry about or think about. But even like the first 12 hours of the fires, we saw reportings of looting.
And I've said this over and over that
maybe this will act as a bigger deterrent, maybe not, but at least it's something.
And I've said this over and over that a lot of the heroic stories that occurred within law enforcement in these fire zones were going back to rescue people whose lives were in peril because they did not evacuate for one reason or another.
And yeah, some of those people might have not wanted to take it seriously. Maybe they thought they would get looted. We also are looking into an investigation for parts of Altadena that did not get the emergency alert.
I really cannot thank our legislators enough for stepping up to the plate, listening to our residents, our community, loud and clear, to our law enforcement officials, our district attorneys, and saying, you know what? We've got to hold people accountable who do this. We said it.
I mean, you expect Luna to say that, right?
We said it over and over during these press conferences. There are individuals who unfortunately come here to take advantage of folks, whether it's through burglary, looting, other theft crimes, scams, whatever you have. But I think today is a great day. So what I'm urging is that every legislator who wasn't involved in this, all the way up through the governor, that you support this legislation, because in essence, you're supporting our community. You're supporting our first responding deputies and police officers, that we have more tools when we're asking you to leave that house to save your life, if somebody does come into your home, we're not only going to be able to arrest you, but work with our partners at the DA's office to work on a prosecution that actually keeps you in prison if you are re-victimizing people who have already gone through so much.
And I got to tell you, that might be the first time I have ever heard Sheriff Robert Luna talk about putting someone in prison, not just hold you accountable.
Because at the end of the day, we want to hold people accountable.
No, these people need to be in prison, because the people who think like that, they cannot be a part of our society. Maybe they can be rehabilitated, maybe not. But those people should not be here. And whatever it costs to keep them in prison, you could argue it costs them way more to keep them out of prison.
To work on a prosecution that actually keeps you in prison if you are re-victimizing people who have already gone through so much. So again, I can't thank our...
I mean, look at that. Robert Luna is saying the P word. I'm all about it. When we come back, we'll hear from somebody that I'm just meeting for the first time, the Ventura County DA, because he's got some examples of what exact loopholes there have been in the laws up until now, because this wasn't the first fire. We know it's not going to be the last fire. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're listening to a press conference with local assembly members and local law enforcement about the need to increase the penalties for those jackasses looting in fire zones. Let's hear from Ventura County DA Eric Narasenko.
Good morning. My name is Eric Nesarenko, the Ventura County.
I got that totally wrong. I'm so sorry, dude.
My name is Eric Nesarenko, the Ventura County District Attorney. Thank you, Supervisor. Ventura County is no stranger to fires, and Ventura County, unfortunately, is no stranger to the opportunistic criminals who take advantage of them. This legislation will expand, strengthen, and clarify the looting statute under California law. Let me go ahead and share with you 3 specific examples from 3 separate Ventura County wildfires that demonstrate how.
That's a lot of wildfires. Can we go after SoCal Edison already?
2017, in the midst of the Thomas Fire, a family fled their Ventura home to visit friends in Oxnard. They did so in 2 separate vehicles. The next morning, they woke up. Those vehicles had been ransacked. All their personal belongings had been taken. Jewelry, personal memorabilia, electronics, handbags.
Stuff.
We could not, in 2017, charge them under the statute of looting. This bill, as proposed...
And I guess that's because it was outside of the immediate zone because they left, and I guess their car wasn't locked. But that shouldn't matter.
This bill, as proposed, would expand the definition of looting to include theft from locked and unlocked cars.
Yes.
Fast forward.
I'd love to see when this gets debated, who is advocating for making sure that it's okay that you could break into cars.
Fast forward.
Because don't forget, the Assembly shot down Scott Wiener's car break-in bill 5 years in a row before it finally passed.
Fast forward a year later to the Woolsey Fire, 2018. A family fled their Thousand Oaks home. A sex offender who was on parole at the time went into that home while they were under mandatory evacuation and stole undergarments and lingerie.
Gross. Okay, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. You evacuate because you're in a mandatory fire zone, and a sex offender breaks into your house to steal the panties.
This proposed bill, if passed, would stiffen and toughen.
I wouldn't use that term.
This proposed bill, if passed, would stiffen and toughen the penalties for first-degree residential burglary. so that this sex offender would face additional time in state prison.
I want to know more about that guy, as in, is he in prison currently? Because holy cow.
Just a couple months ago, as many of you know, we experienced in Camarillo, Somas, and other parts of Ventura County, the mountain fire. During the mountain fire, opportunistic thieves decided to descend on the ash and debris of Camarillo, sifting through lost homes and taking with them copper wire.
Oh, no.
Our Ventura County Sheriff's Department made arrests. They found one of the individuals responsible. He ultimately, unfortunately, was given judicial diversion. We need to stop that.
You're damn right we do. You're stealing copper wire from an evacuation zone, from burned down houses and burned down utilities? No. Let's see. We're going to track to see where this legislation goes, if they get it passed, if they get it expedited, because, yeah, we got to throw the book at all these a-holes and all of their enablers. Thank you all so much for listening. It's such a pleasure to bring this show to you every single day. We're here 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.